All right, what's going on YouTube? I'm back. And just as a disclaimer, this video has been recorded about 7 months ago, so I no longer play the same way that I'm playing then. But it's always good to look back and see your progress. I've been doing a lot of coaching help. I've been doing a lot of trial and error, which is the number one thing. So let's sit back and enjoy this old vlog, and let's see how a beginner plays 1-2. This was recorded from the Charlestown, West Virginia casino, which is a very great casino. They got the best atmosphere out of all the casinos around. The action is not terribly great, but the people are, and it's a very good experience. So let's get into the hands. Alrighty, so here we are in the first hand. We have Queen 10 of spades and the +1. Under the gun, limps. I've raised to 10, which is pretty much about the standard raise here, which I probably should start going larger because in this hand, we end up going 5 ways to the flop. Yes, 5 ways. So we get a not good flop at all. It comes the king of spades, the 5 of clubs, and the 2 of hearts. So when I see this flop, I'm really not liking it. And I'm really not liking it even more when the big blind leads for 15. So this is probably a very, very loose float, but I call with backdoor straight and backdoor flush draws. So everyone else gets out of the way. So now it's just me and him going to the turn. The turn actually does bring help, is it is a 10. So now I have second pair. So now all of a sudden he checks to me, and I decide to put out a small bet of 15. And he doesn't think about it for too long, and he decides to call. So this hand is already playing out pretty weird. So we're off to the river, which comes a jack. And on this jack river, he decides to lead out for 30. And at this point, I just think it's a horrible spot to try to hero down with third pair now. So I don't think about it too long. I decided to go ahead and let it go. There'll be better spots for me to pluck off bluffs. And in these stakes, when people do a stop and go, it's normally a very strong hand. So I just go ahead and let it go, and we're on to the next one. All right, so in this next hand, we're looking at a semi-pretty hand of 8-6 of diamonds. So we're in the big blind, and there's 5 limps. So when it gets to me, I'm thinking about putting in a squeeze play, but I decided to just go ahead and check my option. So we're off to the flop, which comes 2, 5, 7, which puts us open-ended. So that's a pretty good flop, but seeing as we're 6 ways, I'm not doing anything but check, trying to make my hand. So it ends up checking around, and the turn is a 5 of diamonds, which pairs the board. And so it ends up checking around again, and the river is a 4. So now that I make my hand, I'm going to go ahead and put out a small bet of 10. And the player behind me under the gun raises to 20. And 2 people in between call that $20 raise. So when it gets to me, there's no way I'm re-raising, but I really almost want to fold. And this is actually what I say before I put in the call. Never good here. That sounds about right.
I should have folded when you said that.
I had 2 fours.
I had to know. So he ends up showing pocket deuces for a flop set, turn boat, and I show my hand, letting him know that he probably could have got more out of it after the one guy needles me and says I should have folded, which of course I should have. But either way, I guess I didn't lose that much considering I had a straight, but it's always frustrating to go 0 for 2. So next hand, let's go. All right, when you're having trouble winning a pot, this is a great hand to look down at. We have ace king offsuit in the low jack. So it folds to me, and I raise to 10, and only the button calls. So now I'm just looking to hit a flop where I can get paid at. And we might have hit this flop a little too hard because it comes 10 ace king. So we have top 2 pair, and I have first action, and I decide to check. And when I check, he decides to bet 15. So I could put in the check raise, but there's no draws besides a gutter ball or if he flopped it straight. So I just decided to go ahead and call. The turn is the 6 of clubs. I check, and he quickly checks. So I'm kind of disappointed because now I can tell that he really doesn't have anything. So the river is the 7 of spades. And I decide to bet 35, hoping he has anything, and he quickly folds. So wasn't exactly a huge pot, but it's just good to get that momentum from winning a pot, especially when you've been beat on 2 straight. So we'll take it, and now we're ready to get some more. Okay, so now we are off to easily the worst played hand of the vlog. So we have Ace Jack in the cutoff, and there's 3 limps ahead of me, and I decide to limp as well, which is so abysmal. But either way, the flop comes 2, 6, 6 with the spade draw. So it checks around to the turn, which is an ace of hearts. So now we have top pair. So when the big blind decides to bet 6, I decide there's nothing else to do but call. So now the river is a jack of clubs. So once again, the big blind bets 10, and the under the gun folds, and when it gets to me, I decide to raise
30.
to 30. And when I raise to 30, I hear something I did not want to hear at all.
$50 untuk $80.
Now, I know you're thinking this is a more than trivial fold, because since it was limped around, and this is the big blind player who literally could have anything, that he could easily have a 6 here. And you wouldn't be wrong, but for some reason, we all know how it goes. We keep leveling ourselves to thinking maybe we're being bluffed. But you got to think, he bet, I raise, and he re-raises. I feel like a 6 is the worst hand I'm going to run into here, but for some reason, I just decide that, hey, I have top 2 pair. I beat all aces besides ace 6 specifically, so I go ahead and stick in the call, and he shows 10-6.
Nobody raised pre-flop. I was big blind. So.
And that's him giving me a little needle to why he had that hand, which is perfectly fine. It's my fault for not raising. So from now on, if I'm going to get into a pot, I'm going to show aggression, and I'm either going to raise or 3-bet when I enter pots so I can get these hands out. So when people get bad beats, sometimes you got to look back at what did you do that could have possibly avoided it. And if I raise and he still calls with 10-6 and hits his hand, then that's fine. But as a poker player, you got to make the right play, and then you live with the results. Okay, so this hand's not all that interesting. This is just to show you the normal flow of a poker session. There's not always a bunch of big pots back to back to back. So I have queen jack offsuit in the big blind, and I just decided to check my option since the small blind's the only one who calls. So the flop comes jack 8 7 with 2 spades. So I have top pair, decent kicker. So when it gets to me, I decide to bet 3. It's a small bet, but it is a small pot. So the turn is even better. That is the jack of diamonds. So now we have trips. So now I'm thinking he's really on a flush draw. So I size up a little bit to 10, and he quickly calls. So now we're at the river, which is a brick, doesn't complete the spade draw. And when I try to even think about touching my cards, he folds. And there's a lot of that in a poker session in between the big ones. So I just wanted to kind of show you that. Okay, so here we are, last hand of the vlog. I actually started recording really late, but I have pocket 10s in the hijack. I raised to 10 and I get 4 callers. So the flop is 9 of clubs, 9 of hearts, and 2 of clubs. So there's a club flush draw out there, and when I see bet to 15, only person that calls is the button. So when he calls, he could have a 9 or he could have a smaller pocket pair that doesn't believe me. So the turn is the jack of spades, and I decide to bet another small bet of 15. And at any point, if he raises, then I'll probably get off my hand. So he decides to just continue with a call. So now the river is a 3 of diamond, and now I decide to put out another small bet of 20, and he's thinking about it for a while. So I'm just hoping I don't see the raise, but I'm pretty sure if he calls that I have the winner. So he thinks about it for a little moment, and he decides to put it in, and I show my 10s, and my 10s are good, and he tells me that he had pocket 8. So should I have went bigger on any of my bets at any point and went polar, or do you like my smaller bets to keep those smaller pocket pairs in the hand with me? So go ahead and put your opinions down in the comment and we can discuss it. But either way, this is the last hand. So after this, we decide to rack it up and we book a small win, but a win nonetheless. So we'll take it. Alrighty, so we were into the game for 300, out for 392. So that is a win of 92, but it is a win. So we're glad to get it, and we're looking forward to getting a bigger one in the next one. So stay tuned, like, comment, subscribe, and let's go.